Welcome back. Dr. Elizabeth Kolstad, a clinical psychologist, is joining us again to talk about PTSD. Thanks for coming back.
You bet.
So on this segment, I'd like to start off with talking about PTSD, and do folks with depression have a higher rate of PTSD, or do you see that more often?
Well, people with pre-existing emotional disturbances, anxiety, depression, personality disorder, have a substrate that sort of lends itself to experiencing events as more traumatic. So an individual who's depressed and has depression and already is beginning to sort of have a negative evaluation of self and others may more likely experience an event as traumatic and may more likely experience some of the symptoms of PTSD. Same thing with anxiety. Individuals who have personality issues or disorders may have difficult interpersonal relationships and then may experience that those relationships as traumatic, and then be more likely to experience symptoms of PTSD.
So taking that a little bit further, do you think there's a correlation between PTSD and suicide?
Yes, there is. You know, individuals who have chronic PTSD are suffering despair and feeling like they can never get through it. They're ashamed. It's an awful experience of constant danger. And I think that those people end up thinking about suicide as a way of escaping the constant pain and fear of PTSD.
Okay. And so we hear a lot about PTSD, especially with maybe some of our combat veterans and everything, but is there a correlation or with PTSD of people of any age? And I guess I'm looking at children. Can it affect
Certainly
them?
Children can experience post-traumatic stress disorder, although it looks a little bit different.
Okay.
So children might experience repetitive play, might show repetitive play of something that was traumatic for them, but they certainly show the aggression, the jumpiness, the wariness, the avoidance that are characteristic of PTSD. It's important to note, though, that children who were raised chronically with physical and sexual abuse may not experience that as traumatic. They think it's normal. This is how life is. And it's not until they're out of the situation that they begin to realize that it was traumatic.
Oh, that's a very good point. And then talking about alcohol and drugs, how do they play into the likelihood of somebody developing PTSD or having difficulties with that?
You know, I suspect that the use of alcohol and drugs in someone with PTSD is a manner of coping with it. They're trying to numb the feelings. The problem with that, of course, is that in numbing the feelings, they're also disinhibiting themselves, and more aggression comes out, more anger comes out, more interpersonal difficulties come out. And so what is meant to be a way of coping with it actually makes the PTSD worse, because the symptoms become more apparent and more interfering with life.
Okay, so that's really an ineffective way to treat it.
Yes.
Can you talk to us about some effective treatments for PTSD?
If someone has PTSD, the most effective treatment, it really is psychotherapy, with a trained therapist, somebody who's trained in working with not only co-regulation, that is, regulating those physical arousal symptoms, and helping the individual become aware of when those symptoms are getting triggered. So psychotherapy is the most effective. Medication can help a little bit, but it tends to just mask the symptoms, and the real issue of what happened to the individual is not being cared for, is not being treated. So psychotherapy is very effective. I also want to talk about coping mechanisms that Yvonne, I think, has experienced, which is to turn that experience of being a victim into one of controlling your fate, having some agency. So becoming a victim advocate, working with others to spread the word about what PTSD is like. The other positive coping mechanism is exercise. We know exercise helps with just about anything, but it gives a sense of agency, and it can reduce some of that chronic hyperarousal that is a result of PTSD. So I would say psychotherapy with a good, well-trained psychotherapist who gets it and gets you and you feel comfortable with, and regulating arousal through exercise and sometimes through meditation, and then becoming an agent of some positive change.
Great. I want to follow up just a little bit on the psychotherapy treatment. For folks who might not have insurance or who can't afford to have that type of treatment, is there the mental health services available for people in that situation?
Yes, I know agencies like PureView have a sliding health scale. Our community health center, Medicaid and Medicare both provide funding for psychotherapy as well. So community mental health centers and government-run insurance essentially provide funds for treatment.
Okay, I have about 30 seconds left, so I want to ask you what you would tell people who think they might have a loved one or a friend, excuse me, experiencing PTSD. What could they do to get help?
I think the first thing they need to do is to convince that individual to find a good psychotherapist. I think people with PTSD feel ashamed and they want to hide, and they need to be able, sometimes that friend or that loved one needs to be the one who calls the psychotherapist and goes with the person to the first appointment. So I would say get some help as soon as you can. If you can't get help immediately, maybe go to your general physician, and they might be able to recommend a psychotherapist for you.
Thanks so much. This has been great information, Dr. Kolstad. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
I would also like to thank Yvonne for being on our show today, and thank you to our viewers for tuning in. Don't miss next week's show, where we'll be discussing how PTSD impacts military veterans. See you next week. In the meantime, stay fit, stay well, and stay healthy for life with Healthy Living for Life.
Healthy Living for Life is brought to you by Mountain Pacific Quality Health. We'd love to hear from you. If you have suggestions for future programs, visit our website at mpqhf.org or call us at 406-443-4020. You can also catch us on YouTube by visiting our website and clicking on the YouTube icon. Special thanks to Fire Tower Coffee House and Roasters. Production facilities provided by Video Express Productions.